Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome the bespoke puppet and creature makers, Stitches and Glue, who join us to talk about their work on the Netflix show Eric. The supervisors Becky and Paul will talk us through the design and build process of Eric and the other puppets that appear on screen. Please be warned, there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Becky and Paul. Hi, Becky and Paul. Thank you for joining me today.
Hello there, lovely to be here.
Hiya.
We're here to talk about Eric, which has recently come out on Netflix. I think you guys are the first, you're the first puppet makers that I have.
Wow. It's an honour.
Well, absolutely.
Well,
Fabulous.
personally, I think it's an honor to have you guys on because look at the
cool.
body of work, but then also it's the magic of puppets. I think I'm of that age where I grew up with the Muppets, Sesame Street. There's some other sort of CBBC programs as well.
It's pretty golden era, I
Yeah.
think. I think if you're sort of like 35 to 50
Yeah,
or something, you've
you-
really lucked out on
You've
the
been
kids' TV
exposed to
window.
lots of puppetry on TV and film. Yeah, you're quite right.
Oh, you aged me up as well, so
So, that's just us.
But how have you found the reaction to Eric and the sort of buzz that people have been talking about online for it?
You know what? It's been incredible. Benedict Cumberbatch has got a real loyal fan base, hasn't he? And they've
Yeah.
been like, so the feedback's been insane,
I
actually.
think, and then just
Really positive.
like people who aren't DC fans, not that they're not DC, but just aren't like that, are just thrilled to see a puppet and puppets in a drama.
Yeah.
It's such a sort of like,
It's not
it's so different, but also he doesn't stand out like a sore thumb. The creative team behind the whole show have really managed to make him blend in, which is huge success.
100%. Yeah, I mean we're overjoyed, aren't we?
Yeah, it's been really
it's such an
exciting for
incredible
him.
project to be a part of, and now we're able to share it with everyone, and the feedback's been incredible.
Yeah, and I think as well, like because your work is so different compared to a production designer or cinematographer or director, I can imagine that. But either people can be really nitpicky, or they could just be like, "Wow, look at the sort of puppetry, excuse the pun, at work with what you and the team do," which I'm excited to dive into because I have some questions for it, but we'll save that for a little bit down the road. But then also it's always nice when you get people talking about your work and praising it. And when you have that sort of fan base for somebody like Benedict Cumberbatch kind of look into what you guys do, then it opens their world into other projects that you've worked on. And it kind of like feels like it snowballs a little bit when people would say, "Oh, I didn't realize Stitches and Glue did the Dark Crystal, for example."
Yeah.
I mean, that absolutely happened with Eric. Like a lady that I worked with on a different job, she was like, "Oh, I think you should watch Eric. I think you'd really enjoy it." And I was like,
It's really quite funny. Yeah, a past colleague encouraged us to watch the show.
"Yeah, no, it's good."
Was like, no,
We did. We made them. So that was, and she was really like, "Oh, that's incredible. I'm so pleased for you guys," which was lovely. And it was really nice actually to have your own work recommended to you. It was very flattering.
Yeah, but then also I mean, I know it sounds, but just friends of friends that have also got back to us. That's kind of doesn't always happen, because we've worked on projects like Star Wars, and it's a very niche kind of fan base. You're either into Star Wars or not really. But this program's actually kind of spread.
Yeah, also Star Wars is such
a-
like a massive machine,
Sure.
isn't it? And I think because Eric's such a
Seems
the
to be a lot
puppets
more
get
accessible.
featured, and also he's such a sort of key character in it.
He's got a lot of
It's got a lot of
film
screen time. Yeah.
screen time. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the biggest compliment is always if like your parents' friends say, "We loved it, we watched it," because then it's in a way it's like your parents like, "I understand what my child does now. I understand why
Yeah.
they're doing
It's
all these
amazing.
hours."
I think it was your mum's hairdresser,
My
wasn't
mum's-
it? And they were like, "Whoa, now we're talking.
Yeah.
This is like next level."
Praise indeed.
Yeah,
Which I'm very chuffed that Graham enjoyed it.
meant a lot. Yeah.
Just to go back to the beginning, how did the project come about and what made you want to take it on?
So it was back at the beginning of sort of March 2022. We had a phone call from Holly Pullinger, the producer, and she sort of gave a very brief outline of it being a show about puppets and puppets day to day, like the day to day of a puppet TV show. And that we're sort of like, my God, this is brilliant. It's the kind of our day to day. This is quite crazy. And obviously we didn't know about all the drama that follows. It was just kind of like the first 5 minutes of the show that we knew about. And from there, we just sort of like carried on talking to the guys, and the project evolved.
Yeah.
And that's probably about a couple of months later, Holly phoned and said, right, it's a goer. Are you keen? And I mean, there was no question in our minds as to whether we wanted to do it, because it's such a kind of exciting proposition to have a real creature costume in a show, like actually
100% practical.
Yeah, 100% practical in the show.
I mean, at that point, we had no idea of. I mean, we were familiar with Sister's work.
Oh yeah, Sister. We've watched a lot of their stuff.
Yeah,
really appreciated it.
But we didn't know.
And Abby Morgan.
No.
Was just like,
yeah, that was.
And I was so excited.
Yeah, we didn't know the cast. We didn't know it was.
It wasn't. It wasn't even a
Netflix. Was it?
Yeah,
It's all very.
It was
quite unknown, really. Isn't it?
We felt like it was a much smaller job at that time.
Yeah.
So essentially, we probably would have been a little overwhelmed if we knew the scale that it went to at the beginning. So it was really exciting to sort of be at that really early stages of a job.
Yeah, and I think we got visited by executive producers at our workshop.
Yeah,
and
James Featherstone
and have kind of had those early discussions about.
Lucy Forbes and Abby Morgan, Jane Featherstone, Lucy Dyke, Holly Pullinger, all these amazing people came to visit us, our workshop. Also, Alex, the production designer, came because they wanted to come to a puppet workshop and see.
Yeah, it was really relevant.
It's like and actually have the talk here, and it was exciting.
Yeah.
I guess when you're right in terms of if you're told what the size of a job is, it can be overwhelming, because then if there's somebody saying, oh, you're going to have you need to create a 7-foot puppet, that's good. Not puppet, puppet, but 7-foot monster, that's going to has to be all practical and moving and all that jazz, then that could be quite, those, is that at the beginning, having those sleepless nights already before anything comes in.
Yeah, well, also, if we were told that we'd be dressing Benedict Cumberbatch in a creature suit,
so, I mean, when we're at the very beginning, so eventually a little bit away along the design lines, they said, oh, we'd like the monster to have the Vincent's eyes, and we didn't know who it was at that point, and then they sent over the artwork of Benedict Cumberbatch's eyes, and we were all just like, that's Benedict Cumberbatch.
It was a cropped image of just the eyes, and we're like, there's no mistaking who those eyes belong to. So we soon figured that one out.
All right.
But yeah, like the idea of putting Benedict Cumberbatch in a creature suit. Generally, there's very specific performers that have got the right kind of mindset to wear a suit and perform in a suit like that. So that was quite
it's intense.
A big thing, wasn't it? But he was great. He was a pleasure to work with.
Again, actors who have distinct looks, you can say straight away from the eyes, which is funny, isn't it? How, like, as audience members, you can already sort of pick someone out from just eyes, because I think that's what you get drawn to in performances in a way.
Yeah.
But it's funny, isn't it? You just get the artwork, you're like, that's a bingo. We know who that is.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we'd have really read anyone else. If they'd sent anyone else's eyes, I don't think we'd have seen who they were. They're so distinctive, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's just, again, I think unless you had someone like, I don't even know if you'd realize if it was like Tom Cruise's eyes, if it was somebody as famous as that as well.
Yeah, maybe not. The thing is, we just knew the minute we saw them, and we're like, that's.
It was. I remember us all bursting out with laughter actually, because it was just like, there's no mistaking who that is. I mean,
because they weren't
you can't hide it.
telling us who it was, because he hadn't.
It's funny they went to the point of like cropping the image.
Yeah. They hadn't signed. He hadn't signed on the dotted line, and we were like, we can't give it away. And we were like, okay,
sure.
top secret.
Yeah.
You can't believe they even cropped the image. That's quite funny as well. For a show like this, where it's set in the 80s, and we do follow a show that has that sort of similar vibe as Sesame Street, in terms of just trying to be like really sort of child friendly and fun. Where do you begin in your research? Do you want to sort of take the best parts of previous projects that have been around in the past, or do you just want to sort of forget about them and create the whole world from what your interpretation of the script?
Well, we were very fortunate. Lucy Forbes, the director, was so involved in all of that. She came to us very early on.
I mean, she's got so much knowledge,
with so much source material, like imagery from existing shows for us to kind of
So because she
reference.
had so just the Good Day Sunshine characters started off written by Abby as Butters and Lula, who are the butterfly and the spider. But after a lot of negotiations amongst themselves, the creative team decided that we needed more sort of humanoid characters as our main puppet leads, Bug and Mush. To
make them more relatable
for the kids. Also, and then sort of Lucy, the Central Park thing was a really important sort of beginnings of the story, really, and then it was like, who do you see in Central Park? Who would you expect to see? And everyone was very influenced by the puppet shows of the time, but we also had to be incredibly careful to make sure that we were standalone. We were completely different to them as well. So Lucy had all these ideas, and we suggested that maybe we involved puppet design illustrator Poppy Kay, and start drawing all of Lucy's ideas into these massive mood boards of, like, Officer Charlie, for example. There's pages of Officer Charlie.
There was a huge amount of character development, and it's one of those things that you don't know what you want until you see it. So Poppy was incredible. I mean, how many pages of artwork?
It's like 96.
There's like 100 pages of artwork of all of these these ideas that went to a point and then were, okay, that's not working. What about this?
And at that point, everything was just in black and white, wasn't it? So then once all the characters had been chosen, it was looking at the kind of like the photograph of them all together, because that's one of the kind of iconic things of a kids' TV show is the poster. And so we'd have them all in there, and Lucy then chose the colours so that it was this perfect sort of palette of 70s influenced 80s time. Not highly
saturated. It's not, pastel's not the right kind of word. It's slightly muted. It's not back a bit, but you can see that when all the puppets together, everything complements each other. It's not too much of one tone that's overwhelming. It's just like perfectly kind of matched.
And then the sort of way that they were performed, and the sort of design of that sort of thing was very influenced by the way puppets were used at the time, and then the materials were all dictated as to what would be available at that time.
There was, I mean, pretty much all of the tones that, like we were saying, were kind of well thought out. So the understructures were all very much like of the time period. The materials that we chose to use, like the foams, the flock, very much like what you would see on children's TV.
We also worked with Raymond Carr, who was the puppet captain, who's also very well versed in all the original Henson shows.
A huge puppet nerd, I would say. But is his ideas and kind of experience,
knowledge of it was really useful.
So there's a lot to take in from that answer, and it's really interesting to hear how you didn't want to sort of take from other shows and make it. There's obviously a lot of collaboration between everybody, and how well, one, it's very important because your puppets need to match what the production design is, and also what the ideas the director brings and other people to the table. But then also when you're talking about the amount of sort of designing and research that people do, having like that 100 pages of sketches, which would be a pretty cool little book to, if Netflix were to think of like releasing it to sort of showcase how ideas sort of change and then sort of evolve from one to another, or even the short lists that you can come up with. Like the Officer is the perfect example, because it's what sort of police officer would you have and what comes to mind, and then
Yeah. I mean,
Well, it's interesting to say that there was a crocodile police officer.
Oh
Was it
yeah,
giraffe or
because we were influenced by the zoo as well.
all animals.
Yeah.
But then it became that we needed a live hand puppet
Yeah.
to kind of offer the I don't know, real intimate interaction and pick up props and stuff like that. So that was,
and also it sort of creates more interest as a puppet show. There's sort of different versions of the puppet
styles, yeah.
but also I mean, we've been sharing them Poppy's pages on our Instagram, and also Poppy's got them on her Instagram as well, which is a good place to start. Yeah, it's just
a very scaled back
snippet of
versions of some of the character development, but it's really interesting to see.
My favorite page is the dog page, because there's all these different sort of dogs, including a little version of our own dog who didn't make the cut, bless her.
No.
But I mean, Peggy the poodle is very hard to beat, so it's Peggy won.
Stiff competition, for sure. Yeah.
I again looking at, because I've got Peggy the poodle up now, and it's like, oh man, that would have been quite cool to see, with like just the color. Well, if I had to describe, the color is purple with the puffiness, and even though like the photo with the mouth just looks like, it looks so human at the same time. It's really weird. It's really hard to describe in terms of like, they do look very, even though they're animals, they do look very human at the same time.
Yeah, they're really relatable.
Yeah, the forms and the shapes and stuff. Yeah.
That's just one of those weird things about puppets, is that, I mean, not all puppets, don't get me wrong, but the good ones, you can either get really scary puppets, or you can get ones which are really like endearing, and when a brilliant puppeteer brings them to life, everyone just looks at the puppet, they stop looking at the puppeteer and they focus on that puppet, and something amazing in your imagination just takes over, doesn't it?
That's true.
Yeah, you just believe it to be real.
Yeah, and it's amazing as well, just letting people's imagination run wild with the idea of puppets, and what you can create. There's another one on Poppy's Instagram with like the hot dogs and pretzels.
Yeah.
Stuff like that's quite funny, and just even if you read the comments and just like how much people love it, and just it's just funny. It's just how much sort of like nostalgia it invokes, even though you're not related to it in a way that it wasn't part of your childhood, but it kind of was.
Yeah.
I think they were such a last minute add-on, weren't they?
I mean,
dogs and the pretzels.
Food-based puppets are always a winner in my book. I mean, they're just fun. Put a little face on them and be like, oh, this is great.
Lucy was like, now I've had this idea.
Yeah.
And she's like, tell me if I'm mad.
On Mr. Jose's car, we're going to have singing pretzels and dancing hot dogs.
Mariachi band, hot dogs.
Yeah.
Excellent.
They were a lot of fun, actually, and such an instant joy bringer. I mean, I think we've had comments on some of the posts that we've had, and people were mesmerised by the pretzels. They're actually working on the show, like some of the crew, and they just like couldn't stop watching them. They were a lot of fun.
That probably must be the most surreal thing, seeing these things in action and just being like, it's a talking pretzel.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're not used to working on puppet shows, and lots of the guys weren't. That was, that's what Raymond was basically brought on board for, was to brief everyone really how it all works, the structuring of a show like this, and it was a real learning curve for Lucy as
Good
well.
Day Sunshine, being a puppet show within a drama. So Raymond was like, this is a puppet show, we need to make it a believable puppet show. So he'd write all these skits and stuff, which you see playing on the television sometimes when you visit the different people's houses in the drama. But it really was had to be believable. So I mean, everyone was there was I think it was about 3.5 weeks where it just felt like we were making a puppet show.
And we were a huge contrast to what everything else was going on. Like, you know, we were in our own little bubble, really.
Yeah,
We were in
when
this
we
Good Day
arrived-
Sunshine bubble. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, these lovely coloured, these puppets that which were a lot of fun. And actually, it wasn't until we saw the show, it's like all of these
the
dark kind of
serious,
undertones
intense
with,
drama.
yeah.
Because I think when we arrived in Budapest, the team had been shooting all the interior scenes with Vincent and Gabby. Gabby Hoffman and Benedict Cumberbatch had been shooting all these really intense scenes where they're arguing all the time and everyone's really stressed. And then, I mean, we rock up with all these brightly coloured puppets.
Hey!
They didn't know where they were coming or going, but I think it was a very light relief for everyone. It was great fun, and having that live band there all the time as well, adding them their little sound effects. It was brilliant. It's brilliant fun.
That must be such a weird sort of turn of pace of like as actors and crew watching these sort of acting masterclasses of people going at one another to then changing to something really light-hearted is probably like such a weird thing to like mentally prepare yourself for as well.
Yeah, but I think that was the whole juxtaposition of it all. That was the whole
point. It really works, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we didn't know how it was all going to come together, really.
No, we were just running around like headless chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and to be fair, like as when you're on set and you're working, because a lot of the times you shoot out of order, and then on a TV show as well, it's probably the same. It must be a bit weird, like knowing the context of the scene, but not knowing the context of how it would look on the screen compared to what's on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, really a sort of important part of that for us was the development of the Good Day Sunshine Eric costume throughout the show, because obviously it's being built throughout the show, and elements of it, and we were constantly going back and forth on the timeline, as you say. So sort of his eyes get more and more evolved. So I mean, at one point he's just, you know, Vincent gets the piece of foam out and he's about to cut it up and make the head. So his eyes to start off with just like little black felt dots.
It's amazing the choice of materials, how that can make, you know, the look of an eye look completely different.
And then we go and we add the highlight in.
Yeah.
And then the final scene, he's got sort of like a shiny pupil.
Yeah, which gives him that kind of living glint.
Yes. And it was just sort of like, at what stage in the storyline are we seeing him now? Kind of, I mean, which eyes has he got in?
That kind of also happened with the hero Eric, the one that Vincent sees. We were jumping from, I think we're in the tunnels where he's kind of fighting Eric. Yeah. So as well, we had our hero Eric kind of rolling around in quite a grubby
in terms of the suit.
And then we'd have to jump then into like an indoor kind of moment where he's just looking a little bit cleaner.
Yes.
So that was
the cleanup after the tunnels was intense.
Yeah.
I mean, those tunnels were amazing, but the floor was filthy and
really atmospheric. They didn't really help the cause of a kind of quite lightly coloured furry monster rolling around in not ideal situation, was it?
We had 2 hair suit sort of skins, and by the end of it, one was definitely, there was a grubby one and there was a clean one, wasn't there? Because it's just not coming back. So.
No.
When you talk about Eric as a design, so the idea of like you guys having to do the cleanup, I can imagine that's just like one of the most annoying and hardest thing to do, because the fabric, the way that something might get matted in the fur as well, is probably can be very stressful, knowing that you have to get it reset to a certain point as well.
I mean, it kind of is part of our set job, isn't it? I mean, we've been on other productions where, you know, a creature suits like foam latex suits, it's all about the turnaround. It's kind of getting them dry, clean, for the next day on set. So that is a part of it. But it is when you've got a something that's furry. Yeah, it is a lot more to maintain, isn't it? You know, because every kind of move that Eric does on set. I mean, you know, he's flicking of the beard, and his eyebrows as well were a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there was sort of like in between the checks in between each take are hard with a furry thing. You know, it's sort of like you check it, you step away, and someone moves something, and it's just all up in the air again.
Yeah.
But
you just have to be on it.
Yeah, and it's a part of the job we enjoy. It's the sort of making sure everything's okay and it looks as good as it can be.
And we are painfully particular on set as well. So, but you know, you want it to look as good as it can be. So, and that's, I mean, we were so invested.
Yeah.
We were just like, this has got to be perfect. You know, even the disheveled look, it's got to look disheveled enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, the suit was got to look, I mean, Lucy was like, no, more grub, more grub. We're like, okay.
Yeah. But it's cool. We managed to make this kind of grubbiness that we could wash out. So that the R&D into that was a really important.
Yes, it was Becky designed. It was
it's top secret.
Oh yeah,
top secret. I'm not sharing that.
Okay, cool. But it was something that we could just easily wash out because that was
but
the big
stick long enough.
Like, oh my god, how do you make this look super grubby?
Yeah.
But it needs to come out because, like we say, we're
jumping around
in the timeline. So yeah, I saw that movie.
It was a massive challenge, and it was also a massive accomplishment to do it.
As you said, you don't want to give away the secret grub recipe, just in case anyone's listening. But I can imagine though the continuity is a challenge. But as you said, that could be the fun of it. Is that getting it back from D back to A or vice versa?
Mm-hmm.
It is that sort of half of it, and you kind of, I guess it's like you're kind of creating Eric again by like giving him like different looks, just like an actor would have different looks in the show of having you know, mud on his face or cuts to then being pristine again. So that's kind of like another cool thing where you can sort of flex your creativity to how they're gonna look, how Eric's gonna look.
Rise to the challenge.
But with like the design of Eric, where did you guys begin in how Eric would look? Are there things that you need to take consideration? For example, that Eric is designed by a child. So are there sort of blemishes and certain things that you're going to take into consideration, knowing that it's a child that's designed it rather than an experienced puppet maker?
Well, I mean, again, Lucy and Abby, because they knew the story so well, they would basically the main drive behind how he looked. They had Lucy Forbes put together these loads of pages at the beginning of ideas, and the sort of lots of the storyline plots. Like for example, the cat's tail is seen on his tail, and his grandmother's coat has a chevron on the back, and also Edgar's coats have these chevrons. They reference his horns.
There was also the Vietnam vet on the train, wasn't it?
The sort of dishevelled Vietnam vet.
Who had, it was like a bearded cat, wasn't it? That again, that kind of fed into the beard on Eric as well.
Look, and also he's got to not look like other things. So that already exist and are out there. So those guys we spent ages with all sorts of different monsters, and also because he's got such a kind of dark storyline. I mean, Poppy did some incredible illustrations, didn't she? There's one where like Eric's like curled up having a fag on the floor, and he's like looks really like he's had a rough time.
I think the Good Day Sunshine Eric is very much referencing Edgar's kind of artwork. I think you can see that. But the Eric, Vincent's Eric, at one point it was very much a creature, wasn't it? As opposed to like a puppet. So the sculpt of the face was going to be a bit more kind of naturalistic, and we were going to have a silicone skin that was going to be hair punched, and it was similar to something that you might see on kind of Star Wars. But then there was a point when it was Abby that flagged this needs to be a puppet.
It still needs to be a puppet.
It needs to be puppety.
Not creature puppet.
And you totally get that.
It makes perfect sense, and it was a really good call to make when she did.
I think Becky said about Eric, earlier in our conversation, that Eric doesn't stand out. That he's not a big eyesore. It just very much sits and looks grounded within that world. And I think it was a real, incredible call to keep it that puppety, practical look.
So I mean, in terms of the design, the process was very, very long process, and we just kind of like left it up to Lucy and Poppy and Abby, and they were all just going sort of sharing their ideas.
Our involvement was very much the practical side of things.
Yeah, so we were just sort of like,
come on, guys, we need to make a decision.
Where are we going to get this fur from?
Yeah.
Is legal happy? Or, just constantly trying to get it signed off so that we can start to build it. Because in the end, we had about sort of 8 weeks, I think it was, to build him, and it was also over Christmas, and
which isn't long, and also
when everyone goes on Christmas holidays, and they're desperate for supplies.
Eric's suit, it always, whenever we're doing puppets, creature suits, it's always the functionality is key. So it's making sure that we could also getting everything. We knew that the suit itself, Ollie the performer was going to be wearing these goggles, which allowed him to have up to 4 camera feeds on, because once the head of the creature was on, his vision was non-existent. So we had to account for all of that tech, and it didn't then, of course, inform the build and how everything was. Everything came together and how it all came apart to allow all the team to get in there to access all of this equipment.
Yeah. So there's also the kind of the sloth aspect, which meant that he had these slightly longer arms, so we built the animatronic, the cake, what we're calling them,
hand extensions,
which gave him an extra sort of 7 inches on the end of his hand, sort of thing.
I think even there was a huge discussion about whether he has longer arms or he has shorter arms, but
there was a week where they were longer, and then there were a week where I was like, oh no, we just have them
hand extensions back on the table.
Sloth is back.
But it does make a huge difference, like with Eric's silhouette, and I'm glad.
Yeah. It was a really extraordinary process.
It's like Eric's design changed day by day, didn't it?
Yeah, but the final one just was gorgeous.
I think there's another thing as well, like that, for having such little time to create it, and especially as you said over Christmas when suppliers aren't really around. That would probably that creates a whole sort of can of worms as well.
I mean the fur, the length of the fur on something that scale, that you need like 7-inch long fur to create a long-haired look. The supplies for that are few and far between, and also because it's a creature suit, you want that fur to stretch. So we got what we could from off the shelf from a sort of a supplier, and because the colours, no one could really decide on what colour he was supposed to be, so that was always up in the air. So we're like, well, we'll get it in a neutral pale colour, and then we'll artwork it on site to what everyone.
We'd also lots of the panels of the hairsuit were hand knotted, weren't they? And you devised a way of how we could join all of those pieces to give it stretch. But as Becky said, there was I think it was like a week when we were in Budapest where we had this really pale fur coat.
Is that right?
And we were inking and rubbing it up, and Lucy and Abby would come over and like, no, we need more. Oh my god! And we'd already mentioned that there was 2 fursuits, and we did it on one of them, and then by the
when we got the second suit out,
after we got it to the point where everyone was happy, oh my god, the work that it's going to take to get that other one back up to kind of the grubby look. But it was a good decision. Sometimes when you're in a workshop and the director's not there, or the creative team aren't there every moment, it can be really tough to take photos and share all of these developments as they're going on. If everyone's in the room,
makes a massive difference. It was
huge.
a decision that we tried to rush, but it was like we couldn't rush it. No one.
It was such an important
It needed to evolve. Very much along with all the other decisions that have been made. It was
and for those, just needed everyone in the same room.
That's another thing as well, just like how important the decisions are to keep things rolling. And I guess if people delay it in a way, then it does make it a lot difficult for everyone to sort of move along, and then more pressure for people, and then it could cost more to do get something else as well. That'll be another thing people sort of will panic about towards you.
I mean, it was a controlled panic,
Yeah.
an enjoyable panic, and I think that we were so lucky because the creative team was all just such lovely people to work with, and they were really giving and supportive, and it was really special job.
Yeah, I mean, to be presented with a list of colours, and Pantones, at first was like, oh wow, these very particular, but actually it just meant that there was no, we couldn't get it wrong.
That was
like,
on the Good Day Sunshine.
Yeah.
So once we've got that sort of the photograph, the silhouette of all the characters, Lucy Forbes chose a Pantone for every single aspect so that she knew what this poster was going to look like.
Yeah.
But the colours of Eric were the last minute thing.
Well, yeah, it evolved.
Evolved, yes.
With something like so there's two things I sort of want to branch off about Eric. I guess one is the color, which like how did they go about choosing the color and wanting that specific look for Eric? Is it something that just got developed over time, or was it something that was written in the script?
The blue.
Yes.
The blue is, and there's a specific image of a game show host from
what show it was from, but he was wearing this jacket,
blue suit on, and he was stood in front of these massive drapes in block colours. And so around the edge of the Good Day Sunshine studio, I don't know if you ever catch them on camera, but the colours of those drapes were seen around the studio. They sort of did the same. And then Eric is that blue from that suit. Lucy was just passionate about it. She just knew that was the colour he had to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but of course we had to kind of steer away from, Eric looking like any other kind of
there are some other blues out there that are pretty iconic.
Yeah, so it was very specific of where we see those blue accents. So we've got them on his forearms and the chevron on his back and on that kind of hair mask.
The big mask, yeah.
Yeah. And on the tail and on the feet as well.
Yep.
I think as well, like if you think about as you said, there's other blues as well that could be like iconic as well. And I wonder if somebody just went through like a big swatch book of like, I wonder what would look nice. Even go like, because even though somebody had that suit color, it's like, what is the title of like that color? Because it's always, it's like when you go to the paint shop to think about redecorating, and somebody's like, you can get eggshell white, or you can get this sort of white, and you think they all look the same to me.
But they're not. Believe me.
Yeah, they're not.
Like, oh.
That was a hard blue to get.
Yeah.
But he also gets graded in the whole final show with everything else. So it's
So I think
he gets knocked back a bit.
A little bit, yeah. But yeah, it was a challenge for sure. All of those aspects of the build, but it was nice to work with a director that had a very kind of clear vision, really. And because sometimes you do work with some teams and they're not as involved, but this just meant that I think everyone kind of knew what they were going to get.
But also, so the face, we had the fabric dyed for the face, and then once we were in Budapest with the team, you artworked sort of definition and patterns into
patination around the eyes and
into the face, which like very much like with encouragement and from Lucy.
I think that was after the first camera test, wasn't it?
We had there were camera tests.
There needed some like little effort, wasn't it?
To just so he wasn't like a flat color. There's a lot of tonal work into his face and his eye sockets.
Because the sculptors, there's loads of contours on the face, but it actually, when it was on camera, kind of the lighting and stuff.
If it's just one flat color,
just moving off. So just adding that extra little, and it was always a little bit more there. I could just put some.
But it was.
But it made a huge difference.
She really got it right, and it was lovely to have that kind of seal of approval when we got there.
Yeah,
and Abby was.
And we were in it together. I think.
Absolutely. It wasn't us and them.
No, we were very much this. A huge team.
Really supportive unit.
And it helps as well if somebody is there and being involved. Not, I wouldn't say overly involved, but being like having a strong hand in it as well, because that probably makes things a lot easier in decision making and understanding what you guys do as well.
Yeah.
Just because it is I think it's very easy to sort of just say, yeah, just get on with it. But then it comes to shooting, somebody might be like, well, this is not the contrast of what you've done is not right.
The last thing we ever want to do is arrive with a surprise.
Oh my
It's everything we get signed off along the way. There's a digital sculpt that gets signed off. We send swatches out to people. Because the last thing we want is the client to be disappointed. So we want to make sure that we are making what they want. Because to retrofit stuff is just so hard. And also because the guys knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
That eventually it was a process.
That conversation, having that open dialogue is, I mean, so valuable.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, there is a level of responsibility from the client. You know, they've got to be able to articulate exactly what they want, so there isn't any
there's no grey area where people can get lost or confused. It's for us, like, transparency is key.
Yeah. And again, if they're not transparent, then it just makes it, who knows what could happen at the end of the road on a shoot day. I'd dread to think that.
Yeah, no, that would be worst nightmare. I couldn't handle that. Also, we didn't have the facility for that to be an eventuality. You know, there's only so much you can do in an empty room with an IKEA table.
Yeah, and also
set up
even from the get-go, we were very much open about there's certain restrictions when you're using puppets. You know, when you've got someone in a creature suit, there was always there's a good side and there's a not so good side. Because Ollie's got his hand inside driving the mouth. There's that dead arm on the other side.
Let's call it empty.
Okay, well, not fully animated.
Yeah.
So there has to be that dialogue. People.
So working with
BOP,
Benedict Spence was super
he was
supportive,
fully aware of all of those added bits of detail. You know,
because Ollie could swap it round so that he had his other hand doing the mouth. So if there was a key sequence where he needed to animate something with his right hand, we could swap the suit around. Or likewise, one of the assistant puppeteers could step in, like Lawrence Moran could come in and do the arm from behind. We made it so that the suit was accessible through the elbow, so that you could put your hand in and puppeteer stuff around like that.
Yeah, and also Phil Woodvine, who was doing all the animatronics as well. He was pretty much had an open dialogue with Lucy as well. On shoot days, you know, there was this big, you know, it's a huge collaboration of ideas and communication was key, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because Phil's not in, you know, he works with Ollie and he feeds off of what Ollie's actually performing on camera, but then there'll be a potential note from Lucy, maybe we should look that way, or, you know, so it's real collaboration, really.
So I did want to sort of get into the performance side of it, because you have Ollie Taylor in the suits, which is, so I've spoken to Benedict Spence, the DOP, about it, and he was saying how Ollie would have these goggles to see things through the cameras so that he could perform what he's seeing. When it comes to building something like this and taking into performer into consideration, how do you guys go about sort of setting that out?
Well, I mean, it was great because Ollie's worked with them before on Dark Crystal and other projects, and us obviously. But from our point of view, our job is more about stowing all the gear that goes with them. So, for example, there's a massive battery, which is the sort of size that you put in a lawnmower. There's a great big receiver because they're wireless things. These things get hot and they're heavy. So we had this kind of like compartment shelf on his bottom where these bits would go. So we had to consider that, and then the sort of accessibility, because as we were dressing Ollie, the last thing to go on would be the head. So we have like little flaps and stuff in the side of the neck so that we could get in and touch things on the goggles if things weren't working. And then also because there were some delicate little connections in those goggles. so, and then also the sort of bodysuit around Eric, we'd sort of sometimes open that or go in through a leg hole to access things.
Even though it was a tight fitting suit, there was still quite a bit of space
in there,
wasn't
yeah. And like when we were shooting in New York, because it was hot there compared to Budapest, we had like a little ice vest in there, which would help cool him down. But the goggles were super, and also the witness cameras, which were set up sort of with Phil and Ollie sort of figuring out where the best position for them to be would be. So he'd have the feeds from the actual A and B cam, and then the witness cams to these goggles,
which generally would be in witness camera kind of pointing at the end position, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think, and then the other one
sort of beginning, start and end.
So that was like at the beginning of kind of any kind of figure out of the shot. You know, Ollie would work with the video team and they'd figure out where those cameras needed to be, and Phil was very active in that.
Make sure it happened.
Well. Yeah. But yeah, pretty much we left it up to the video guys really.
Yeah.
We kind of had too much responsibility. We knew the physicalities of the goggles and how much space they would need inside the suit.
So every time we'd dress him, we'd get to a certain point, which basically like trousers and feet on.
Yeah.
And then the sound team and the video team would step in and apply their bits to the back so that they could do all their checks. Then we'd apply the torso section, and then we'd go to set, and then the team would rehearse their moves, and then there'd be sort of like final video and sound checks.
Head
then
on.
put the head on.
Yeah, head and hands, and then we're kind of good to go.
Yeah,
and then fingers crossed it all.
It was tricky because there's, you're relying on this wireless system, and there are loads of other things using the wireless system, so it can get overloaded, and things can sort of get a bit temperamental, which was a tricky part of it.
But when it worked, it was incredible.
Oh yeah, when it worked, it was seamless.
And you forget. I mean, I think everyone did that Ollie couldn't see without these goggles. But he, when everything was working fine, all of the tech, he'd go from one point to the other like it was a breeze, and
hop, skip and a jump and cracking jokes.
But it was so easy to forget.
Yeah,
there was a guy in the suit because Eric really felt like a living creature.
He would definitely become Eric when he got in that suit, and he'd do the voice and he'd crack jokes. He'd have everyone in stitches.
Yeah,
and it was great. It was great fun.
I think as well, like people would forget that there's someone in there.
Always happens.
But I can imagine like at the rap party as well, if there was one, being like, I'm Eric, loads. And he would just like, who's this guy? It's like, I was Eric, I'm the guy in the suit. It's like, were you? No, I don't believe that.
Oh, he had a lot of head off time, so everyone knew who he was. It was fine. So he was great fun.
Okay, well, I'm glad that he had the head off time as well.
Yeah, don't you worry. He was fine. He was known, and everyone was pleased as punch with him.
Yeah, especially because, like Becky was saying, they'd rehearse before the head would go on anyway. So, yeah.
I mean, he'd probably only have the head on for like a maximum of about 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes, depending on the heat of the day. I mean, there were some days when we were shooting externally in New York that were so hot, and it was just... So we'd have this big we got a big leaf blower so that we could pump air into the suit, and we'd have iced water with straws and all these things so that we could get in there to keep him as refreshed as possible, and the ice suits that I mentioned earlier, cool suits. Yeah, we tried our best to keep him as comfortable as possible, but the head really didn't take very long to put on and off. So it wasn't a big deal.
We got it down to quite the fine art, didn't we? It's like a Formula One pit stop. Because sometimes when there was glitches with the goggles, we'd have to whip the head off quite quickly so that the team could get in there and look at their connectors, and then we'd have to get it, because also we want Eric to be shot on. That's the thing we've worked on other productions when technical issues come up, and it is that
and things get cut, don't they?
Yeah, it's the drawdown of time that is a real killer for kind of practical effects, and so us as a team, we need to make sure that we're not messing around. Everything is like when we're suiting Ollie up, it's done as quickly as possible, and when things are asked for, they're ready. So I mean, that's like with every department on a film set, but you know, it's exactly the same for us. Yeah, efficiency is key.
Yeah, and you need to cut that time down. I think, especially when people are getting in suits, time is money, and
I mean, the first time we sort of got Benedict in the Good Day Sunshine suit, it was our last day shooting in Budapest. We were on a split and we needed to get this shot done before the sun went down. And Benedict arrived in the Easy Up. I don't know, it probably took about 4 minutes to put him in the suit. We were just
honestly don't think it was even that long.
We had to move so quickly to get this A-list star into a creature suit.
And also I think we spoke about this earlier, you know, hugely and intimidating, the fact that we've got Benedict Cumberbatch and putting him in this creature suit, but actually because we had to work so quickly, we didn't have time to
we didn't
have
time.
Like, right, let's do it.
And then the first thing that he had to do was the running.
Oh my
God,
God,
he had to run past the Lux nightclub with the kids kicking the footballs in front of him, carrying the head. And it was just that.
But not only that, they were wetting the floor down. They were literally spraying the floor, giving it a wet look. You were like, oh my God.
Then we'd had like a dry run when he tried the suit on, sorry, just to check that it fitted and it wasn't like, you know, because some people have claustrophobia issues when they go into these kind of suits and stuff. It was just, okay, it fits, great. Yeah, that was it.
Super casual.
And then now all of a sudden he's running with the camera going along on a car next to him, and it was just like
in these oversized kind
before the sun goes down, and it was just such an intense afternoon evening. And
he did it.
Good times. He was amazing. And he ran so fast. And
because I had to kind of Benedict would do his run, and then I'd kind of follow on to take the head off.
To take the head, because it's quite a weight to be carrying.
And I was exhausted, and I wasn't even wearing a suit.
But you had your go in New York then.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess as well, like the idea of like, even though you have that pressure of like, we need to go, especially when you're chasing the sunlight, that's another thing where that creates just another headache for other people to figure out. But then also when you're chasing after the suit with the water, like where they're spraying down the set, that would, again, what a health and safety issue where you're like, oh my gosh, this could be hairy.
Everything. Everything was
and then you're asked, is this okay? Are these shoes okay to run? And we're like, well,
Triton.
I guess. But they were, I mean, the soles of Eric's feet were rubber.
They were rubber,
they were.
And there was a very nice pair of shoes within the shoes, which
so they were.
So
I mean,
we tried up. We would do it. We were like, it's as safe as we can hope
make it. But there's so many external issues
like
going
the kid
on here.
with the football. I don't know.
Well, imagine if like
no control over that.
Well, if a kid wants to be a bit naughty, just throw kick the ball towards him or something, and be like, oh, no, please no.
Little
or
extras.
A little extra, or like they 2-foot him or something, just for the just for the clout sort of thing. I know I've kind of run out of time slowly, but I'm gonna just ask one more question.
Sure.
What was your favorite puppet to make?
In the show?
In the show, yeah. I think that's probably, it's like asking your favorite child, basically.
Oh. Oh wow. That is a really tricky question, isn't it?
I mean, we did really enjoy the hot dogs and the pretzels because they came at the end and they were such a light relief. But I don't know if they're our favourite.
Well, I got to puppeteer them with
you did. We had Stitches and Glue team sat in Mr. Jose's hot dog box puppeteering those guys.
So we a few of us actually wore period costumes.
You had to get dressed up as wranglers of the day.
Yeah, there was going to be puppet wranglers on set. And we were like, well, this is costume background artists, and we were like, well, actually, because we're going to be
because they actually need to do the job,
and it just made sense. So before I knew it, I had this big wig on.
Paul arrived looking a bit like Napoleon Dynamite. So if you see any social media videos, all of a sudden,
but also Tash and Nick, they had these big hairdos as well.
Tash, about 7 years ago.
But that was fun to be on set and puppeteer, the pretzels and the hot dogs.
I think my favourite is Eric, to be honest, because he proves to be such a versatile character. And I think, I mean, just because he's got a person in there, there's so much more that he can do.
It's
For
a
me, it's
challenging
him.
build. But
However,
also,
I have a massive soft spot for Peggy. She's
Peggy
a
the
rock.
Poodle, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that one.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
agree?
I think so. But again, I think because we were so invested with the Eric suit, I think it's hard
And
to
then
not.
there's Mr. Jose's eyebrows.
Exactly, this is
Oh my
impossible.
goodness. I'll do it. Sorry. Who's your favourite?
Who's
Who's
my
your
favorite? That's very hard to say. Well, I think I like the policeman just because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
that sort of warmth of it. I think that helps to sort of like, sounds bad, but having that sort of like moustache, like chuckly sort of person, I'd say is quite funny. I think the animals, like when you do have the animals as well, they're quite good. I think Mr. Jose is quite funny as well. And I think it's just
really hard to choose, isn't it?
it's the little apron that does it for me, I'd say.
Oh, his apron is adorable. Yeah. And we had Elizabeth, a incredible fabricator and costume maker, was our cutter for all the costumes. And I think that the apron was a kind of like, if we've got time, then we'll put it on. And she was like,
She just made it happen.
We just nicked it.
Yeah. Good impression. Yeah, no, he was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And he's also, he's got a set of eyebrows that you
Saucy
can make
eyebrow,
a finger pull, can't you, inside? And they're quite fun.
Yeah, they're cute. I like them all. And then Mush doesn't have eyes, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very rare that a puppet doesn't have eyes. So
he's just got that big hairdo.
The big helmet hairdo that's just,
a lot of fun.
But that's like the style, right? That couldn't really get away with that 70s sort of look, and 80s as well. But yeah, I think that's quite fun. That's another good look as well. So how can you choose? Yeah, again, as you said, very hard to choose. You got me there. You got me.
We turned it around. Turn that question around.
Oh no, Uno reverse. Damn, I've been done again. Becky and Paul, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Absolute pleasure.
Eric is streaming now on Netflix. Go out and watch Becky and Paul and their team's work, and savor it. Thank you again, guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Rob. It was lovely to meet you.
Thanks for your time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.